Alrighty, we are live. Welcome to Limitless Mindset, episode number 7, the law of intuition. And so before we dive into the law of intuition, if you are new here, my name is Logan Manzanares. I am a business owner, a fitness professional, transformed well over 2,000 people's lives through this little thing we call health and fitness. I'm a real estate investor, a husband and father, and one of those group of people on this planet. I'm grateful to have two awesome dudes with me today, Mr. John Bodnar and Mr. Tim Cruz here as well. And they're gonna join me in on this law of intuition. We're gonna tell everybody about our intuition and our guts and what they're telling us today. So before we dive in though, John, do you want to introduce yourself and tell people who you are?
Absolutely. My name is John Bodnar, and I am a coach at BSB Wealthy Body Coaching. And what I love to do more than anything else is help people get through situations and reach their highest self, regardless of their circumstances. So to teach people that they do have the power to choose their life, to control their life, and to focus ultimately on what they do have control over, which is everything going on up here.
And up here, if you guys aren't watching, this is his brain. That's what he is. We point to up there. All right. Tim, who are you, my friend?
What's going on, guys? My name is Coach Tim. I'm another coach here at BSB Wealthy Body Coaching. I am a self-proclaimed meathead. I love picking up heavy things and setting it back down, but I'm even more so passionate about helping people really reach and manifest the best version of themselves. So that comes from health, wealth, happiness, and of course, fitness. So I'm really passionate about helping people. In fact, I'm even more passionate about helping people than I am about helping myself. So this is going to be an awesome episode. I'm kind of excited to talk about what our intuition is going to tell us.
All right, well, let's dive in, fellas. So episode 7, law of intuition. So what is the law of intuition? Law of intuition states that we are infinite beings with access to limitless wisdom and insight. We can access the wisdom by listening to our sacred selves and the divine. So if we want to break that down into layman's terms, I'm going to start with John here. John, what does that mean in layman's terms?
We have a lot more answers than we think. And it's just a matter of finding or of getting access to those answers.
And when we say getting access to those answers, expand on that.
So in order to access those answers, most of them are available in our subconscious, which takes intuition in order to access. It's this trust in yourself, trust in that whatever answer comes to mind when you ask yourself a question, it's probably the right answer. That's all there is to it.
Awesome. So would you say it's like your gut feeling, right? It's like that whole expression, like trust your gut, kind
of. Exactly.
Awesome. Tim, what is your interpretation of the law of intuition? What's it mean to you?
So this could be like a super deep rabbit hole. We could either go down like the basic terminology, or we can even go the physiological, like evolutionary psychology type route. So I'm just going to keep it simple for now. I'm sure we'll get into the deeper stuff later. I'm just going to use what John said. It's honestly, it's just that gut feeling. We process so much more information than we consciously are even aware of. Like on the level of like thousands, if not millions of data points per second we're constantly processing. So the law of intuition is actually our gut feeling processing that stuff. So I don't want to dive too much deeper than that for right now. But yeah, that's where I'm going to stop.
All right. Well, let's dive in a little bit here. So to live a limitless life, you must become an expert decision maker, right? And so successful people make more decisions than unsuccessful people, and poor decisions will actually get you further than indecision. And so I love this, right? Because ultimately, that's actually like the value of being able to trust your intuition is just your value in order of making decisions. And so oftentimes people, including myself as well, and I'm sure you guys can definitely relate to this, is that we get paralyzed by not knowing what to do, right? It's like, I don't know what to do. And as we go back to the law of intuition, inherently, like we have enough information inside of us to make the right decision for us at that moment. And so that right decision at that moment, like what it does is it leads us to eventually making better decisions in the future. But like at this very present moment, we have enough information to move forward. And ultimately, that's what life is really about. It's about moving forward constantly and growing, because here's what I've learned through this whole process is that there actually is no right or wrong decision, right? It's only your interpretation of that or your opinion of that decision which makes it right or wrong, which you can also you're the one who actually dictates whether that opinion is good or bad either. And so ultimately, like the only poor decision is not making a decision at all. So Tim, tell me your stance on that.
So I think this is kind of the crux of the entire thing is decision making. It's very important to trust yourself and know, like, be confident that when you make a decision that you're gonna, just make that decision and own it. And to kind of pair what you said, like we have the three tiers of like best to worst. We have the right decision, the wrong decision is second best, and then no decision is going to be your worst option. So I think I had a coach a while ago. His name was Bedros Keuilian. Really smart cat, really high up in the marketing world. And he would challenge us to make decisions all the time. And it would be something little like when your wife or your girlfriend asks you to go to where we're going to dinner tonight, to just make a decision, like get really good at making fast decisions with the small things in life, because that's going to build that confidence. So when a big decision comes down the pike, you're confident to make that decision. So the more we hem and haw, really what we're doing is we're confusing ourselves and we're just not trusting ourselves and our intuition. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
That's awesome. Bedros was almost my coach, and then right before, like I was like getting down on Bedros, and then that's when Alex came along. So like I was close to being part of the old Bedros frat, but never quite made it. John, tell me, what is your opinion on decisions?
Well, I'd like to give an example actually of hearing my intuition and having at the time what I believed was the right interpretation of it, but is very, very clearly the wrong one. So when I was in college, I had a knack for skipping class, and it started off with telling myself like, oh, I'm smart enough. I don't need to go to class. Like, it's not an issue. I'll catch up. It's fine. And then when I reached a point where I started to get some anxiety around going to class, I'm like, ooh, okay, this isn't good. But I allowed that anxiety to paralyze me and prevent me from making the decision to go, which I would argue is actually no decision, because it wasn't like I'm not going to go to class. It's just I'm going to stay right here and not do anything. And then there came a day where I really wanted to go to class. Everything in my gut was screaming at me like, you got to go, you need to go, it's good for you. And then all of a sudden I felt unable to go. Like I got ready, I put my shoes on, and I didn't open the door. And that really freaked me out, because I had all of this evidence that I needed to go. My gut was telling me to go, but my interpretation of what I was feeling was wrong, because I didn't have access to my intuition, what was actually telling me, and it prevented me from making a decision at all. And the difference now is, which I'm sure we'll talk about how belief breakthrough works with the law of intuition, but in doing that and trusting my intuition, not just trusting to know what it is, but trusting that it's telling me what to do and that I need to do it or should do it and will feel better from doing it, I'm actually able to make decisions now. Before, decisions were incredibly difficult for me to make.
I love that. And like the expression I like to use, like, to summarize this all up, is like you commit first and you figure the rest out as you go, right? And some people want to know like the exact answer of how you do this. Look, let's use weight loss as a great example. It's like, how am I going to lose 30 pounds? It doesn't matter. In fact, there's a lot of different ways you can lose 30 pounds. But you know what the first thing you need to do is you need to make the decision that you're going to lose the 30 pounds. Like it's no longer a choice, it's not an option. It's just, I'm going to make it happen. When you get that full commitment, essentially what a commitment is just a decision to say that I'm going to achieve this thing, right? And so once you do that, then all of a sudden the path, it starts to become more clear. And maybe you start with doing, a couple at-home workouts here. You do a couple like fad diets and they don't work. And all of a sudden you just keep on doing things. They don't, and they're like, some working, some are not. And then all of a sudden you get to a situation where you get presented an opportunity where you're working with awesome coaches, like let's say John or Tim, right? And all of a sudden, all those things you did in the past, they're not poor decisions. They led you to understanding that when you get in front of somebody like us, like these guys know what the hell they're doing, right? Now you can commit, you can go all in with what you're doing. And so I think that's ultimately what it is it's like, every time you make a decision. And so like I said this in a prior episode, but like some of the best clients that I see currently are ones who have tried a lot of things in the past. It's actually what what most would consider had failed, but they just said try. They just like took action and they like learned. And maybe it looks like a poor decision at the time, but it wasn't, because it led them to eventually getting into a situation where they could be successful because they recognize what it takes to be successful, because they know what not to do, which in turn helps you know what to do, right? So that's how I see this whole slide taken care of as far as decisions. It's like, just do something. Do something.
Can I add one little thing to that? So I think if we even take the word decision, and where that root word comes from is very similar to the word incision. Decision means to cut off. So if we think of Cortez, when Cortez came over late 1400s to Mesoamerica, it's a famous story when they got to Tenochtitlan, where I'm trying to remember, where Montezuma ruled the Aztec Empire. He had his troops burn the boats because they were deciding that they were either going to conquer or die. There was no backup plan. So I think even starting with the word decision, like what that means, is really important. Like when you decide, it's more than I'll just try it. It's I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to cut off options to do anything else and commit. Again, when you're committed, you will be amazed at how much you learn along the process, and you're able to actually find that straight and narrow.
100%. I love that. That's a fire example, by the way. It's old textbook history. Limitless mindset. A little bit of logic in with this emotion, right? It's fire. All right. So when we get stuck, it's because we're trying to make decisions in our head rather than our hearts, right? It's the law of information, the law of intuition, states that the information we need to make decisions best serves is always present. I think we've been stuck on that, but again, it basically it incites that like we have enough information, we just got to make the decision. We have to trust ourselves, trust our guts, trust our intuition, and believe in ourselves. So, anything else you guys want to add to this piece?
Real quick, just going back to the class analogy, the reason I didn't go in that moment where I really wanted to is because I didn't trust myself. So it's not so much not having access to the intuition, but I didn't trust it. I didn't trust my ability to follow through. And that's what happened. So yeah, just making in my head, let my limiting belief of no trust in myself get to me. And that's what ultimately got me stuck.
Yeah. Tim, anything you want to add to this slide?
Yeah, I think this kind of harkens back to like the science part of it. So we think about what the purpose of intuition actually is, like evolutionarily, like why do we have intuition? It is main to keep us alive or keep us away from harm. So imagine you're out in the Serengeti walking around trying to kill a buffalo or whatever, and you have all of these, predators and whatnot, danger, pitfalls, going around you all the time. It would be very challenging to focus consciously on all of those dangers and still kill the buffalo. Because if you know anything about hunting, you have to be like completely focused if you want to be a successful hunter. So our subconscious mind is really there to protect us and really there to help us by filtering out all of this massive amount of information that's coming in. So those gut feelings that we get, they're not just woo-woo, they're not esoteric. They are actually based in like your body's desire to live and to be successful. So knowing that should give you a little bit more confidence in trusting that intuition. I can tell you, I've got probably a million examples of when I did not trust my intuition and it bit me in the butt real hard.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to put it, to make, for anybody who's out there who like has like the woo-woo, like trust your intuition, they can't put it together, is that your intuition is actually, it's actually your body's, it's actually a physiological response, essentially, to what we're not consciously present of, what our subconscious is. And I think that is actually important to really state, because it's not just woo-woo, or like I'm just like making stuff up, but like it's actually a physiological response, which I think can help some people who need a little more logic in their decision-making process. Will help them make better decisions as well. So.
It's like that we have that feeling that you're being watched. It's not because something magical is telling you that you're being watched. It's like your subconscious knows that you're being watched, and it's like, hey, something's looking at you right now, but it's a real thing.
Can you hear me knocking?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about how we actually get into a place where we ask more consciously about what we're trying to figure out, what our subconscious is doing, right? So there's actually 6 steps in order for us to be able to like call on our intuition at a moment's notice. And the 6 steps are grounding, asking, listening, receiving, trusting, and then taking action. And so the first one we'll talk about is grounding. So grounding means to clear your mind, get into a meditative state, and prepare space to receive information. So Tim, like, what is your process for grounding? What does it look like for you?
So my favorite way, and it totally depends on the headspace that I'm in going into like needing to ground. So if I'm fairly calm and relaxed and not stressed out, like deep breathing, like I like to use like I guess you would call it a box breathing pattern where you breathe in nice and slow through your nose for about 4 to 5 seconds, you hold for 4 to 5 seconds, and then you exhale through the mouth almost audibly, so kind of loud, for another 5 seconds. And I'll repeat that for 5-10 minutes depending on how long it takes, and it really just kind of settles the thought. So if you think about your brain or your thought pattern as a river, and all of your thoughts are just leaves flowing down the river, when you first start, you have all these leaves. There's a ton of leaves, and it's really easy to get distracted and follow those thought patterns and really I guess it really induces anxiety, if anything, if you follow those paths. But as you breathe and you slow down, the leaves become less and less frequent, and the water becomes much more still. And from that place, you're much more able to listen to what's going on inside. I just call it checking in with myself, is what I call it. So
Awesome.
grounding, checking in with yourself, they're one and the same.
Awesome. John, anything that you do a little differently to get into a grounded state?
Actually, yes, and it's something that I implemented relatively recently. So grounding, what I've been doing primarily is, yes, focusing on the breath, not counting like Tim, but just focusing on as deep a breaths in as I can and blowing out as much air as I possibly can, even to the point where it's almost a little uncomfortable, because it gives me something to focus on. And because if I have something to focus on that doesn't really require a whole lot of actual focus, it allows other thoughts to just go away and make sure that I do have the space in my head to receive answers. And something I've been doing a little differently lately is I'm also just like, I'm a drummer, I'm a rhythm guy. So as I'm focusing on that breathing, I'm also just like tapping on the table. And maybe for some people that would be distracting, but for me, it's something really easy to focus on. It requires zero thought whatsoever. So the combination of that and the breathing really lets my mind just clear and be ready for, or to open up that space.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Great little insight. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I'm honestly, like, I'm a pretty good grounder. I'm pretty good at being able to control my thoughts and let everything go. I can fall asleep on a moment's notice, so it's not hard for me.
Well, let me ask you this question, Logan. When you have a rough day or something like an SOS, like something bad happens, and your stress and anxiety is like up here, for me, the breathing, all that stuff, it's not as effective. I almost need a state change. So one of my favorite techniques is something just to get my heart rate really high, like 20 burpees, or even go take a cold shower, like something that's going to jolt my nervous system, and then I can do the breath. Is that similar to you?
So I guess I'm thinking about more of a grounding state and more of like a not a reactionary state, but rather than a proactive state. And so like in a proactive state, I'm good to go. When it comes into a reactive state, I think the way that I handle it in a reactive state to get it like grounded is honestly through affirmations and just like talk to myself and like hear myself out loud. That's how I would change from like getting a frustrated or anger and then trying to ground myself into a calm state. So I guess in my head, I was thinking of this more from a proactive state rather than a reactive state, which by the way, you can do it either way, right? Mm-hmm. So, which both ways are great, you know? So let's talk about the next step is to ask, right? So now you're gonna ask. So again, like I'm coming from in this frame, I'm coming at it from the standpoint of a proactive. So like almost like we're not under like an immediate stimulus of anger or frustration or big emotion, right? And so but you can. Of course, you can, and I encourage you to, so that you start to understand why you start to feel those things, why you start to feel frustrated, why you start to feel upset, like it actually goes both ways. I'm really glad that you brought that up. And so the next piece of this is ask. So once you get in grounded state, you ask the question, like, what is the pressing struggle you're facing? Like, is it what's holding back from losing 35 pounds? What's holding me back from making $1 million? What's holding me back from, from feeling loved? What's holding me back from whatever it may be, right? And so that's the next step in this process is literally just to ask. So either of you guys have any insights on this specific step 2 of the 6-step process here?
Not a whole lot. Just don't overthink the question that you ask. Any sort of question is worth answering, and trusting your intuition to ask that question is very helpful. And if it's not the right question, the right one will come up. It'll come up pretty.
That's actually really good. That's true. It's like just because you don't think it's the right question, you ask the question, and then as you start to think about it, you'll come up with more questions. Tim, any insight?
More of a correlation than an insight.
Okay.
I find it very interesting that this entire framework for intuition, it literally mimics prayer in almost every religion. So like if you think about like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, like all of the major they all have some aspect of this going on for their daily practice. And I think that it's not to hijack the conversation and put it in a spiritual spin, but I think that there's a purpose. There's a reason that they all have this in common. It's because it's incredibly effective, and I think it's really important for our mental and emotional well-being. And even take that step further, like to ask the question, like why can't I lose 35 pounds? It's also healthy for you in a physical sense too.
For sure.
All right. Law of intuition step number 3 is to listen, right? So you ask the question, now you listen. And so this is where you really need to just like sit there and let it come to you, right? Let it come to your heart, let it come to you. Yeah. I don't know. Any insight on this piece?
I think this is the piece that requires the most trust, because if you listen and you get an answer and you're not all about it and you're like, nah, that's not true, then you're defeating the purpose of this grounding. So I think this could be the most challenging step is to listen.
Yeah. I think this is the most challenging part. In all honesty, when I first started doing this was the piece that I struggled with the most. But I was part of this men's Bible study. And this was probably, 7 or 8 years ago. And we went on like a retreat out into a cabin in the woods. And we spent like half of the first day just having fun. But then we sat down and we actually started writing out like problems that we were having or issues that we were struggling with. And then for the next 48 hours, the challenge was to be quiet, no words. You just were in silence and solitude is what they called it. And really what it was doing was it was breaking that cycle of like we're masters at distracting ourselves. We really are. Like when you think about trauma and pain and hardship that we go through in our lives, we're really good at either falling into depression or falling into like a slump, or we get really proactive in distracting ourselves and repressing those things away from our conscious mind. But when you're forced to be quiet and be still, like a lot of stuff comes up. And it was like really weird because we were a bunch of like alpha male dudes, like, they all looked like me. And these guys were like breaking down crying by the end of 48 hours, like so much emotion that they had been repressing for so long was just like bubbling up. And not to get lost in the anecdote there, but I think that was what helped me trust the process, was literally going to a physical place out in the woods, like going on a walk. So now like when I need to be quiet, I go on a walk. Like I call it walking meditation. Like I'll go for a walk, no music, just out in the woods and just literally just listen, just shut up and listen. And a lot of these answers will come up when you allow the space for them to come up.
Awesome, dude. Love it. And then the next step is to receive, right? So now you listen, now you receive. And so the answer might come to you subtly or very clearly. It's the right answer either way. And this kind of goes back a little bit to the trust as well. I think it's like you listen and then you got to receive it. And then it's like, is that really the right thing? And so these ones are very similar in that aspect. But John, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I might retract my statement that listening is the hardest part, because truly it's the receiving of it. Like listening is something that oftentimes just happens, but it's a matter of what you do when you listen or what you're listening to, and that's where the trust comes in. That's where the trust in yourself comes in, even if it's not feeling like yourself. It's coming from in here, which I'm pointing at my brain. Then it is right. Then it is yourself. So this is the trusting piece. This is the part where you need to just leave it, and then of course follow the next couple of steps after that.
Yeah, might not make sense. And I think people, when we do breakthroughs, they're like, it's probably not gonna make sense, but trust it, say it, receive it, and then as you start to talk about it, it'll start to make sense as you move through this process, right?
Yeah,
Tim, oh, go for it.
something I've said to people when doing a breakthrough is I say, trust the answer, especially if it doesn't make sense.
Nice. What's your insight on receiving your intuition?
Mostly just parroting what John said. I do think that this is the challenging part, and generally the pitfalls that you're going to come up against when you get to this part is, all right, you've been quiet, you've asked, you've been quiet, you're receiving it. A lot of times you doubt yourself whether or not that's right, or is that just your brain playing tricks on you? So kind of having a barometer for truth there is important. So having, being confident in who you are. But the barometer that I use, honestly, especially when it comes to making big decisions, is it scare you? Do you actually want to do it? And generally, when the answer is hell no, I don't want to do it, it's most likely because that's exactly what I need to do, or that scares me. That scares me to death. Then I really need to do it. So I kind of start to pay attention to that fear as my barometer of whether or not this is where I need to go. So that would be the only thing I would add to what John said.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, it's like I think a lot of times we doubt what we hear. We don't want to receive because we know it's true. And we're like, oh man, that sounds like a lot of work, or like a lot of pain, or a lot of change, right?
Don't want to confront that.
You don't want to confront what you know you need to hear, basically. And then trust, right? So this is what we've actually been talking about with the first two. And I think it just like falls right in line. And like you listen, you receive it, and then of course now you actually trust it, right? And so grab that first thing. Don't doubt yourself. Don't second guess yourself. I think we touched on this with the first two. That's like it really cements listening and receiving is trusting what you're listening for, and then what you're hearing, right? And then the final one, the most important one, take action, right? Like follow through. And again, like that's where you need to trust it, because it's like, oh, it's probably the big scary thing you don't want to do. Now you need to actually go ahead and do it, because your body, your intuition, your inner self is telling you you need to do it, right? And the more and more you actually follow that intuition, you take action on it, the more trust you get in yourself, which actually allows you to make more decisions, better decisions, and ultimately the person who makes the most decisions is the one who is the most successful, right? Because you just learn more by making more decisions. So Tim, tell me, what is your take on taking action?
So I think it's important to take action, obviously, and I'm going to throw a little Tony Robbins at you. When he does his breakthroughs where people walk through fire or jump off a building or all the crazy stuff that they do at those events, and they get this intuition that they need to do something, he has them commit to something financially on the spot, because then there's no backing out at that point. You've already put money down. Like, let's say this, you have a client that they need to lose weight. They know they need to lose weight. They're in a bad spot. And they confront that. They confront that with whether it's with a coach or just on their own. They confront something, and then that person, like let's say there was two people, they both come to the same exact spot. One person immediately commits to let's say doing a Tough Mudder in 6 months, and they're not in shape at all. They have 30 or 40 pounds to lose. And the other person just kind of him and haws and just knows that they need to do something, but they don't commit to something. Who do you think is going to be more successful at the end of that 6 months? The person that made that hard commitment, that knows that they have a Tough Mudder coming up in 6 months. And if they don't do it, they're going to be in a lot of pain when they try to do Tough Mudder and they're out of shape. The other person has all the back doors that they need to just back away and just put off the decision till tomorrow. So I think taking action is incredibly important. In fact, I don't think any of the stuff before this means anything if you don't follow this part.
For sure.
So true. True. Right. And then if you don't take any action, then you're literally just telling yourself that you don't trust yourself. Right.
Mhm.
And like literally all the steps actually back into each other. So by not doing this last thing, you really can't do any of the first things and honestly feel good about it. So
Real. Yeah. And then, this is where the law of alignment really comes into play. Because if you do all of this work with your intuition, you get to the part where you have to take action, or you get to take action rather, and then you don't, then you're clearly not in alignment with what your beliefs truly are, that what your subconscious is telling you to do. And as soon as you push that away, you get so close. Like when you get that close to taking action and then choose not to, you're pushing the possibility of action even further away than it was when it started. Because when you're not feeling aligned that way, as we've talked about before, you're not going to take action, or it's going to be really, really difficult to, if you don't trust yourself, you don't align with what you believe, with what you want to do. And ultimately what that comes down to is trusting that your intuition, that your gut knows what is best for you and knows what you truly want to do and need to do.
all right. So law of intuition, belief breakthrough, right? And so how do we pair the law of intuition with belief breakthrough? And so John referenced this earlier. And so literally like the law of intuition is how we identify our false and limiting beliefs, right? And our intuition is what gives us the insight to what those are, because logically, our logic doesn't do as good of a job as our subconscious does of telling us what our limiting beliefs are, right? So Tim, can you tell me how do you use belief breakthrough in order for you to, or excuse me, how do you use the law of intuition in belief breakthrough in order for you to get to these limiting beliefs and pull them out?
So I think I don't know, how much does our audience know about the belief breakthrough process?
Well, if they started at episode 1, they should know about everything.
Okay.
But
So,
they probably don't, but they probably haven't. So go ahead and
okay.
give a little context first.
So generally speaking, with like limiting beliefs or false beliefs, if we can just sum that up into like one sentence, it is a belief that does not serve you in the current moment. And those evolve and change as we grow. So I'll give an example of a breakthrough that I literally just went through probably 2-3 weeks ago. That was pretty impactful. So I've had this core false belief for the longest time that I'm not enough, right? Like no matter what I do, it's not enough. It's not enough. I always have to do more, no, be more, like chasing that rabbit, that hamster wheel, right? That never ends. And through with my belief, my breakthrough coach, therapist that I work with, we identified that this came from some childhood, one specific scenario where, and I'll just give the story. The story was pretty simple. I was a baseball player, played baseball all the way through college. And I must have been like 7 or 8 years old. And my dad was watching the game, and I went 4 for 4 from the plate. I batted the cycle. So I had a home run, triple, double, single. Like I had a great game. But the problem was I had an error in the field. I had a ball that squirted through the middle of my legs. And so on the way home, me and my buddies, and my dad was driving us home, we're just like hooping and hollering, having a good time. And I really was the type of son that looked up to his father a lot, like I still do. And I wanted his approval and his, sign off that you did a good job. So I was like, Dad, didn't you think I did so good today? He's like, yeah, you did okay at the plate, but what happened with that one ball that went through your legs? And literally from that moment, like I was crushed. I was like deflated. And from that moment, I developed this belief that I wasn't enough, that even if I went 4 for 4 from the plate, that wasn't good enough. Unless it was absolutely perfect, it wasn't good enough. Well, fast forward 25 years, going through this process, I realized that I held on to that belief for so long, and it manifested and permeated into every aspect of my life. It really was holding me back in a lot of ways. And after going through the belief, like I knew that something was off. That was my intuition. I knew something was off. So we went all the way back to that memory. We went through it and we changed the story that was wrapped around that specific event. And the story was that I was not good enough. And it turned to, my dad was an awesome dad. He was working 12 to 14 hours a day. He never missed a baseball game. And he went home with me afterwards and drilled. He practiced that ground ball over and over again until the sun went down so that it wouldn't happen again. So now the story is, my dad's an awesome father and he was always there for me. And guess what? I don't have that belief or that feeling that I'm not enough anymore. And it was all literally from that one story when I was 7 years old.
That's fire. That's like a great story. John, what's your insight on this one?
Also, for the belief breakthrough process, steps 1 through 4 are all about accessing your intuition. Really, all of them are truly. You have to use your intuition in the entire process. But when you're grounding, identifying the first limiting belief that comes to mind, that's accessing your intuition. Coming up with a memory, coming up with a deeper belief, like all those first 4 steps truly are trusting your gut, being willing to do the grounding, the asking, the receiving, the trusting, and of course the action, which I would say is if you take the action and finish the breakthrough, that's a really solid action to take in that moment. Then of course there are more concrete actions that need to take place after that. But if you're willing to come up with positive beliefs, that is an action. That is something that serves you. So really it's just a matter of the law of intuition is essential, not just like, I shouldn't say essential, it is absolutely 100% necessary in order to finish the breakthrough process and actually get the most out of it and begin to take action from it.
Yeah. And I always think it's important to let everybody know is that like it's a skill, right? It's a skill like this, like the breakthrough process is a skill. And then like I would say a piece of the breakthrough process is accessing your intuition. And so like the more and more you do it, the more and more you seek answers, you search, you listen, you trust, you take action. Like it becomes something that you get better at. And I actually just had this conversation with Katie. I actually had a breakthrough call with a client earlier today, and I'm just like, oh, like his call was like second call was much better than his first call. And I was like every single time somebody does a breakthrough, like they get better at it. And so it's the same way as when you go to a gym and you do squats, like the first time you do it, you're going to suck at it, right? But as you squat more and more, you get better and better at it. It's the same thing with this belief breakthrough process and accessing accessing your intuition is that the more and more you do it, you learn more by making the decision that you're going to get good at it or that you're going to do it. And you just learn by doing. And so I guess that's my insight on this one is just, because what I notice a lot of times when people first start doing the breakthrough process, like they can't find a memory, they can't find a limiting belief, and like it's okay. And we stop and we just reground, right? Step back through and like ask again. Keep asking, like ask until you get the answer. Because I'm telling you, like it's there. And so I think that's an important piece to understand that the whole process that we just walked through the law of intuition, everything from grounding to asking to listening to receiving to trusting, taking action, it is all a skill. And so if you're not very good at it on day number 1, good. You shouldn't expect to be good at it on day 1, right? Like wait till you get to day 60. I promise you'll be better. And then when you're on day in 6 months, whatever that is, 6 months, math is on that, 180, right? Whatever, 175. You'll be better. When you do it for a whole year, you'll be better. And so just think about that from that point of view. And it really is a skill. So, Tim, anything else you want to add to that, or John, anything else you want to add to that?
Not for me. I think that's a great way to sign it off. Just recognizing that you're going to get better and better at it. It's something that requires reps to be good at, but starting somewhere is, hey, that's that making that decision, and it's not allowing yourself to be indecisive and doing nothing.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to understand how much this is going to help you. Like if we view our attention, like let's say we have attention units, we'll just call them marbles. We only have so many marbles. And if you're not making decisions, if you're not being decisive, not following your gut, and you have all of these unanswered questions in your brain that are just running around crazy, a big chunk of your marbles are being stolen from you. That's kind of where the phrase "he lost his marbles" came from. Is you've basically all of your marbles are being taken up by all these unanswered, undecisive things that you're doing. So if you're able to go through this and actually decide and act on these things, you're not only getting the benefit of action, but you're also getting the benefit of freeing up your attention so you can be more effective at work, with your family, with your friends, with your fitness, with everything. You have more attention to put towards the things that really matter in life. So it's not just about like the benefit. There's a secondary benefit that comes along with this. So I think that's important to take in mind.
Awesome, fellas. Well, law of intuition. A great one to learn, great one to practice, and a great one to learn how to trust, right? Trust your gut, trust your intuition, trust yourself ultimately. So that's all we got for you guys today on this Limitless Mindset episode 7, Law of Intuition. We'll be back next week. Be on the same channel. We'll be back with the next law in the 9 laws of conscious creation. So my name is Logan Manzanares, signing out with Tim Cruz and John Bodner. And we'll be back next week. All right.
Yes.
See ya.